Hey, everybody, welcome back to View from the Top podcast, where we help growth-minded men who desire momentum in their business, their family, their faith, and their finances get through the valleys and up the mountains to their very own view from the top. I'm so glad that you're listening in today. It's a fantastic episode that we've got today. Got a great guest in here. My name is Wally, and I've got Big A. Big A, welcome.
Wally, you should be pretty exhausted by now.
Why do you say that?
Because you've had a busy week, man. You've had folks in. When you bring your parents in, you got to spit shine the house and vacuum and fold towels and clean up the yard. You've been busy, so you should be tired right now. How you feeling?
I feel pretty good. It's been a few days since my folks were here. You know, we moved to Tennessee a year ago. No one really came in. I mean, a few people came visit us in Michigan, but not like they come visit us here in Tennessee, partly because it's fresh, partly because the grandkids are here, partly because it's Nashville, for goodness sakes. So we got brothers and sisters and friends and parents coming in and my parents, both sets, because my parents are divorced. And so actually Sonia's parents. So in the last 6 weeks, all sets of our parents have been here at different times. So it's just a lot. And so I don't know if any in the audience, you guys experience this or not. You may live like your mom literally lives like next door to you, which is fantastic.
Yeah,
and so I don't know. I know you guys have lived like in local proximity for a long time, but I haven't. And so my parents have pretty much since, the past, 25 years have lived, 8 or 10, 12 hours away from us. And, when parents come to visit, it's really good. But over the years, I've learned a lot about my parents, about us in terms of like, not just how we prepare and, obviously they have a clean place to stay and all that stuff, but mentally, like you've got normal life going on. And I've got one set of parents. I love both my sets of parents, but I got one set of parents that are just, comfortable just sitting and listening.
Right.
And they don't really have any hobbies. They don't really read. None of that. So when they come, there's like this elevated, oh my gosh, I have to like, what's the word? Entertain them.
Yeah.
And, man, that's just, it used to be really exhausting. And my other set of parents are like almost opposite now. They come and I'm like, hey, you guys want to talk to us while you're here? Or are you going to like, read your book and go do your thing? So it's just huge dichotomy. But over time, we've learned that now I can say this. I mean, Sonia and I had our disagreements. We had, just about our parents coming and all that stuff. And I remember when I was, working, even now it's a little bit different because we've learned, but when my parents would come visit us in Michigan and I still had some work to do, I remember Sonia at some point saying, hey, these are your parents. I'm here happy to spend time with them, but they came to see you. But now it's a little bit different. So you don't have that, but we had that in the past. And now it's like, I think we've pretty much learned that not to overthink it.
Yeah.
It's really about just being in relationship, being there,
getting together,
communicating ahead of time.
Yeah.
Hey, what do you guys want to do while you're here? Here's what we have going on. How can we help you have a good time? What would make it amazing for you guys while you're here? Just that simple, literally, I asked those questions in 5 seconds?
Yeah.
Just asking those questions, I think of no matter who it is, family coming in, friends coming in, knowing that ahead of time. Yeah, it gives you a great amount of freedom. Everybody's on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a little tired just because there's been a lot of people and I'm an introvert. Right. But I really enjoyed the time with all of them when they came.
Well, here's the question. This is putting you on the spot, and you don't even have to answer it. You can defer and say, no, I'm not answering that, Big A. If you had a choice, would you have them live here all the time, or do you like it when they come to visit and they leave?
I would like to see them more.
Okay.
Yeah. So if they were close, that they have their own lives. They'd have their own lives here. They wouldn't be on top of us or anything like that. But
it seems like it can create a lot of havoc throughout the year. Do we go there for Thanksgiving? Do they come here? Mm-hmm. Do we go there for Christmas? Do they come here? We're going to be at home for this birthday, this anniversary, their birthday. It seems like that's what Robin and I talk about. It's like, man, my girls live here, my grandkids live here, my mom lives next door. And we're like, do we want to go 3 minutes down the road or 5 minutes down the road? Right? Whose house do we want to go to? But, this is a great segue into today's podcast episode with Anthony.
Mm.
Anthony's been with us about 10 years now, right? A long time. He's one of
Yeah.
the OG guys of Iron Sharpens Iron. But he's talking about kind of work-life balance. He's talking about communication. That's kind of what we open with. Anthony has got such insight being a counselor, family counselor, and he does that with Sarah, his wife. And we dive pretty deep. And I've just got to own it right in the beginning. I was really frustrated at the beginning of this interview, quite honestly, because I had some prepared questions and I couldn't get him to answer the dadgum questions. I was like, man, would you just answer my, and he had me in a position that I was frustrated, and he turned it around and made me think much deeper. That's what I liked about it. Ultimately, I didn't start out that way because you know me, I want to be like, hey, just answer the questions and let's go. But he said, you can't do that. And he showed us in the interview how it all stitches together. And so I thought it was very helpful at the end. Matter of fact, it was a really solid interview. After I let go, I said, okay, I'm not in charge here. I'm not going to be able to ask all the questions. He gave us some very helpful information about communication.
At one point in this, I felt a little awkward. They're in the middle. I think it was about 2/3 of the way through. I mean, he put my head on the chopping block.
Yeah.
He didn't let the guillotine fall down.
No, almost.
But, well, my gosh, I put my head there and I was like, oh no. So yeah, listen into this, man. Anthony Witt, happy to have him here. Let's get him in here.
Well, I'm pretty jazzed up, man. One of our long-term friends, Anthony Witt's in the house. How's it going, Anthony? The plain white tea. I'll explain more about that later.
I was telling Kevin, it's I feel like today has just been an all over day. Lots of running around. So taking a deep breath to have a good conversation with you.
Yeah, you scared me to death this morning. I don't know that I should tell this on the air or not, but I was out. I blow off my driveway every day. Wally, I got one of these backpack blowers that it's like the Jetsons. I could squeeze it a little harder. I could take off. It's so powerful.
You just like the power.
I'm out blowing the driveway.
I noticed that it's not the lower commercial residential grade. It's the commercial, higher commercial grade.
Listen, we've got 2 lounge chairs and a pumpkin missing. I mean, this thing is wicked. It's like good. I've torn up bushes and pots and stuff. Hey, I was out blowing the driveway off this morning, and this horn just sat down on their horn. I thought it was somebody pulling in my driveway, running over me, and Anthony's out there in this great big monster pickup truck just laughing his head off. He lives not far from us now. That's Anthony, awesome. Listen, man, I'm fired up for a number of reasons. The reason we wanted to bring you on today, though, is for your invaluable counseling skills. I mean, you're off the chart. You lay low and you don't say a lot, but you're kind of like the E.F. Hutton. When you do speak, it's like people pay attention and they listen. And you're just such a great guy in the counseling space. And you've been doing this a long time with Sarah. Just got a great wife, and you guys have just done a remarkable job. But when I started thinking about this interview, I said, Anthony and I have been friends now for a decade. Like you started with us in Iron Sharpen Iron from the beginning. Like you're the OG. You've been around forever, and it's pretty cool too. Though you moved from Illinois here to Hendersonville a couple of years ago and bought a house not 5 minutes from me, which is pretty cool. And now we go to church together. And speaking of that, I want to compliment you on one more thing. This is all the compliment you're getting from me for a while. Okay. It's like I'm just saying it all
right
now,
man. And write it down. You show it to him later.
This is it. But you got the best mannered children I think I've ever been around. You got what, 7? Is that right?
7.
You got like a basketball team.
Is it still 7?
It's still 7.
Okay, right.
It's going to stay 7.
But they sit the row behind me in church, and I just love talking to them. They're just always so well mannered, and you and Sarah have done a remarkable job with those kids, and so thank you for that. Also, Anthony's got other skills. He spoke recently at our live event that we host twice a year here in Nashville. You lit up the stage, man. It was really good. We were talking on father wounds, and you got up and made a really good presentation. And that's the reason we wanted to ask you to come on the podcast. Called Wally. I said, Wally, we got to get him in. He's got so much wisdom to share. But As a small business owner, I was thinking about this myself, and I know all the challenges that come with the territory, right? We just passed 44 years small business owner. Wally, you've also been a small business owner, I think, for the majority of your career. Anthony, you have too. I mean, all three of us have kind of been in that same boat. We all are in the same mastermind group, and so we share a lot of the same challenges that we deal with each and every day. But the only difference between Kevin and I and you, Anthony, is that Kevin and I, Wally, have grinded it out over the course of our career. We're like in the weeds, and you're educated on the topic. And so that's why we brought you in today to give us some of that insight. We could stand here and talk for hours about all the different facets of business and what we face each and every day. But I did want to narrow it down to like 3 or 4 topics today. It's all related to the same, but the things that I want to talk about that I hear all the time is the work-life balance. That's such a critical topic that the men in ISI are talking about, the men that I coach, the men that come to our live events. The other thing is the uncertainty and the risk. Like, man, I want to do that, but I'm not sure. And sometimes our spouse is not on the same page. And that brings the third topic, and that's the communication breakdown. And I'm guilty of it too. You know, like oftentimes Robin will say something. I'm like, well, I told you that. She goes, you didn't tell me that. Like, well, I thought I told you. And so that doesn't go over well. And then the last thing is just the limited social support or isolation that business owners are facing today. And many of us just feel alone. We just feel like, hey, man, I'm in this thing by myself. I don't have a clue what to do. And so we continue to grind it out over the course of our lives. So let's go to work-life balance first. Robin and I struggle with this the majority of our marriage. You know, it's like I'm working too much, or she thinks I should be doing other things. How can entrepreneurs effectively communicate their boundaries, and how can we get a handle on this work-life balance?
Well, I want to say, hey, that's a great list of things. We should flip them around. Start at the back and move forward. But
you're the guest, man.
Yeah,
you do what you want.
Can
Let's
do
start
it. We
there.
can do whatever you want.
Because that's what we're going to do. But there's 2 different sets of work-life balance, I think. And we might get to this, so maybe I'm jumping ahead, maybe I'm not. It's customer-based work-life balance, and then it's family work-life balance. And so customer-based for work-life balance is how do I have a life outside of my customers, maybe is the simplest way to say that, and still have customers.
Right.
And then the reverse side of it is the family portion. I think when I look at this list of things, right? So you listed a couple things. I was taking actually a couple notes. Right. Work-life balance, risk, communication,
isolation,
interaction. I believe what a lot of entrepreneurs, and I like to call them entrepreneurs, it's a misnomer to the true entrepreneur who starts something from nothing, from they're not starting something. I actually think of you, Kevin, like what you did with your business, it didn't exist at all. Right. Nothing like that existed at all. Right. Where if I go and buy something or buy into a franchise or decide to, start a car dealer, like I'm not an entrepreneur because I'm a counselor, right? I'm a therapist. Now, maybe my unique skill set is entrepreneurial, but there's a ton of counseling practices. That's not really an entrepreneur. So I think it's a misnomer to call them entrepreneurs, but I like to call them entrepreneurs because, and here's why. You can call them small business owners. I think those words work very well together. But because their whole life, and I'm getting to the work-life balance, their whole life is not normal. And this is one of the small places I like to use the word normal. I don't like to use the word normal in my work because people are like, well, I'm not normal. And it's a big issue. This is the one place where I use it a lot. You're not normal if you're entrepreneurial. And you're not normal in everything. You're not normal in your work-life balance. You're not normal it's everything. In your finances. You're not normal in your career. You're not normal. You're not normal in anything. And so I'm coming back to work-life balance.
So Robin's accurate in her assessment of me all the time. She says, "You're not normal."
No,
So
but the family's not normal.
Right.
Like the whole family unit. Like, well, let's assume a family unit. Like I work with my wife as another employee. I know you guys have had your wives in and out a little bit,
Sure.
But we're not normal. And to say that, well, it should be like this. You go to work at 9, you come home at 5, and you're done. It's over. That's a misnomer when you decide to balance that or to grab that life, that entrepreneurial life. You know, I'm air quoting here. And so I think we have to start there, I guess is where I was coming at that work-life balance concept, because you're not normal. And you have to start to work on the fact that we're not normal. You're not normal. Like I said, let me go through some of those things. You're not normal in the way you use your finances. Why would you put money into that thing over there? Well, because I can see the picture of how that thing can go over here and come over here, create this thing and build something. A lot of people, I can't tell you the conversations I've had where people be like, why would you do that? Why wouldn't you just take the salary and be done? Or why wouldn't you just do that? So we're not normal in finance. We get ostracized because of that. You get ostracized because you don't have anybody to talk to. And so I think work-life balance, I'm trying to come back to work-life balance, I promise. I think work-life balance requires an understanding, first off, that we're not normal. That's not an excuse not to have work-life balance. What that is that's a realization that we run on a different beat. We run on a different drum. And because of that, sometimes our work-life balance might look like, well, I'll give you an example. So I took my wife on a date, an impromptu date Sunday night. You mentioned we have 7 kids. We don't get away a whole lot. We try. I'm working really hard to try to hire my older kids to be the babysitters scheduled wise. I get them to do it. But we went on a date on Sunday night. We didn't even leave our house till 8:30. I'm trying to go to bed closer to that time normally. We went on a date, and we went on a date to a new place that had opened here in town, and we kind of were talking. We had some things that we needed to talk to about each other logistically, and then we actually spent our time talking some business stuff. Now, that right there was actually work-life balance for us, because we were able to engage with each other together with the struggles that each one of us were having. It just so happens to be about our business that we both happen to work in. And so that's what I mean. I'm not giving you a straight answer because there isn't really a straight answer here. You have to be able to work around the fact that you're different. Or that
what works for you is what you're saying. Like it works for you and Sarah.
I'm saying what's worked for you. But if I was to go deeper, it's what's the personality of the person that you're with? What is the proclivities of the person that you're with? Or if we go even deeper, what are the wounds and the shame of the person that you're with, your spouse and your family in this case? And how do they tick? That determines how you're allowed to have work-life balance or not have work-life balance.
There's such a difference in the way most couples view this topic, right? I hear it all the time. It's like,
can you tell me what you hear?
Yeah. So we hear, a lot of the times one of the spouse will say, "Hey, I think you should go in at 9 and get off at 4, or go in at 9 and get off at 5 and take an hour lunch break and get 3 weeks of vacation," to someone that's self-employed. And I'm like, it just doesn't work that way. And so now we've got this communication barrier, right? Because we're not communicating, we're not thinking the same. How do these couples deal with, where do they start in figuring out some semblance of order in their life for a work-life balance?
Can I throw another example in on there as well?
Yeah. So
you talked about the idea of finance within an entrepreneur or small business owner's home. I mean, it's clear that most couples fight about kids, sex, or money, right?
Yeah.
So money's one of those. Yeah, all of them, right? At one time or the other, there's 3 of those things we're fighting about somewhere. Like we have disagreement or difference of opinions, I should say.
Yeah.
So, but when it comes to money, like as a small business owner, I remember some experiences myself where I took a lesser salary, like double digits, multiple digits, double digits less in the early stages of my business because I was putting money back in the business. Yet when my wife looked at the bank account statement of my business, or I should say our business, the context around that, right? So as business owners, a lot of times, even though if we have which you should have separate bank accounts for business and personal, but even if you have separate, there is that between time and money, there can be a big gap between the understanding of our spouses, whether they're working in the business or whether they're not working in the business, but they're seeing what's going on. And so I think there's another example of there could be just a wide gap of perception and understanding that an entrepreneur or a business owner has that makes them abnormal.
Yeah, like the first thing I think about when you say that, this is not an answer to your question, is you failed. Not you, Kevin, but like you failed. That person failed. They failed in explaining to their wife what it means to do this. And or they had no clue and they weren't willing to pick up that rock and look and see what it meant so that they could explain it to their wife or their spouse.
That's work, man. That feels like a lot of work.
It's a ton of work.
It's tiring.
It's a ton of work. But let me tell you this. A couple weeks. No, it was last week. And it's going to happen again this week. I think I saw 6 or 7 people. Every single one of them was 65 or older. And the problem was that they turned from their spouse. Every single one of them was marriage based on turning from their spouse in their career or in their working years. So it was like 65, 70, 80-year-olds. All of them, this history of not doing that hard work. Of not doing that hard work to say, and that's because there's 2 sets of hard work. One set of hard work is I have to do the hard work to figure out what the heck it is, right? Hey, I'm gonna take on this. I don't really want to call it an identity, but I'm going to take on this thing, this lifestyle. Entrepreneur is a lifestyle, and it's not a glamorous lifestyle, even when you're maybe doing really well. It's an outcast lifestyle. You're going to take on this lifestyle, not doing the hard work there. So there's that side. And then the other side is explaining that to the other person. And so that they understand it. Because when they don't understand it, it's not their fault. It's your fault because you're trying to talk to them like you hear, not the way that they hear.
No one wants to hear what you just said because it's truth, man.
Yeah,
it's hard truth.
Big A said something about education earlier, or like, hey, you got all this. I don't know what you said. And I like wrote it down because I wanted to come back to it. No, I have that because I keep messing up. I'm like, I can't figure this thing out. Like, how do I figure this out? So it has nothing to do with I'm just another guy trying to figure it out. Now I don't remember what our question was. I don't even know where we're at.
We're talking about work-life balance, and we've covered 3 different topics under that heading. All right, let me ask it a different way. Is there such a thing?
My initial response is no. There's understanding.
Okay.
And
That's what Roy Vaden says. He says that prioritize your priorities and be inordinately out of balance in all the right places. And so decide what it is that's important to you, agree with your spouse in regard to that, and that's where you spend your time.
So let me say this. I believe that there, like, I agree with the Roy Vaden stuff and the way that he wrote that. There's periods of life, and I'm making a fairly strong assumption that we're talking about married individuals, or that are with someone, right, committed to each other. In that, there's phases. I'll be honest. Right now, I want to work really, really hard. Like, I want to work really, really hard. And then I stop. Every time I stop, I look at my kids and I say, I don't want to work at all. I don't want to work at all. Because of the phase of like, and part of the reason I don't want to work at all is because, your kid is coming into my office and telling me what their parents are doing. I'm like, shoot, I don't want to be that dad. And then it's like, I'm like, right? So there's a work-life balance. Like, my work-life balance, I'll be honest, is I want to work very hard. And when I say very hard, like, I want to be the 20-hour a week or 20-hour a day guy. I'm not right now because I'm spending more time with my kids. I'm getting off this call and I'm taking kids to the park, and we're going to spend the evening at the park just chilling, like doing nothing, hanging out, playing basketball. stuff like it's a waste of time.
So
But it's not a waste of time.
That's a great place to go. Is like, how do we get to that decision? Like, what are the proactive steps that people listening now can take in order to prioritize those priorities so that they can say, I have work-life balance the way we designed it?
Yeah, that's the last word is the right word. People don't design it.
Right.
That's what I was getting at with the couple. There's a point where you have to come together and to discuss, like you have to have open communication. You have to talk. It's so often. This morning I had a couple this morning, and he's not open his mouth, not say anything. You guys have met this guy, right? He has no emotion, right? Keep his mouth shut. Don't open. Don't do anything. And she's we talk about everything. I want to know your feelings on the color purple, like everything. And those extremes are isolating themselves from each other. And so if they can't figure out how to communicate together, and that's what I'm saying about work-life balance and figuring out, okay, what is it? You have to have that conversation with that spouse. Hey, I think we're in a phase or think we're in a period of time right now where we need to spend more time with our kids. It's critical. Right? Well, what do you mean it's critical? Well, then you have to dive into what it means to be critical. You said something earlier, Big A, and I didn't write it down, but you said that, hey, we've gone to 3 or 4 topics and we're just on work-life balance. That's the misnomer that most people think. Well, we're on this one. It's not one topic.
Right.
It's multiple. It's a whole life. And we need to stop putting
You shifted
walls.
right into the communication breakdown, right?
Sorry about that.
So, right. No, that's good because it's part of this, right? And so I always tell Robin, I'm not sure what you heard, but I know what I said. And that doesn't fare well with her, right? But what are some of these communication challenges that couples are facing today? Some of them are running businesses together. Like, how do they overcome these communication breakdowns?
So that's a different question, and I want to get to it. I think one of the big questions I'm running into right now, a ton of, with the working entrepreneur. So, someone that's not retired or that is not, on entrepreneur career number 6 or something like that, is the inability to use creativity because of the stressors associated with their work, which also reduces their ability to express emotion, which is like a byproduct. So I don't know what to do, for instance, because of the stressors associated with work. And if I'm honest with you, most of the stressors that I'm seeing revolve around the financial side of the work, like my cash flow. I don't know what to do because my cash flow is not where it's supposed to be. And because of that, they're not sure they can't communicate with their spouse at the moment because the only defense that they have from keeping themselves safe is doing nothing. So the defense that they use, clinically we call it a defense mechanism, right? That they use to stay safe so that they can function at all is doing nothing. And I think part of the communication, like let's say, and I'm being gender neutral on purpose here. So like if the female is running the business or the male is running the business, I know most of the people that we work with or that I work with actually are the males. That's kind of my focus. But that's the person that has to start figuring out, okay, they're in this place. I need to help them get to another place. If I just come and say, you're not communicating with me, what's wrong with you? That's going to shut me down. That's going to shut them down even more because they're at a space of stress where they just need to be able to feel safe.
I can see how all this is stitched together, right? One thing leads to the next. And the communication piece, what are you seeing with couples today? And what are some of the obstacles that maybe we can dodge? What are some of the things that we could be proactive in our communication around some of these topics that would be more beneficial than having to come and see you and you break it down for us? Like, what are 2 or 3 things that we can do to communicate better, to eliminate this problem that we have with the communication breakdown?
This is not a clinical thing, but I believe it's to know the other person. That's the key, right? It doesn't matter what filter we put it through to know the other person. What I mean by that is it doesn't matter if you do an Enneagram or a Myers-Briggs or a DISC it doesn't make a difference, or none of them. The important part is to know the other person because we speak from a place. I want to say it this way: we speak from a place of safety. So even when I'm yelling at you, it's because that's where I feel safe, right? So knowing the other person, and that's a perfect twist, right? Our good friend Floyd tells a story about yelling at his wife on a time when it had nothing, like he shouldn't have snapped at his wife. Like, I'm not going to go into the story. Actually, it's a plug for some of the stuff that we have here at ISI. You should go check it out, the master classes. But that's a spot where if I know my spouse, that's where I can stop and I can communicate with them. If you don't know the person, it's really hard to communicate with them. Right? Like, I think I use Big A, I don't know if I've ever told you this. I don't think I have. I use you as an example of communication all the time. So one time, Kevin, I'll tell you a story. One time I sent Big A an email. I don't even know what the subject matter was. I can't even tell you at this point. I could probably go find it. And he emails me back. Like, I emailed him couple paragraphs, right? He emails me back. He's like, I have no clue what you're talking about. Like, that was the response. I emailed him back 3 bullet points, and he's like, got it.
Yep.
Well, now I know how to speak to Big A. And I really think that that's because I believe we're designed to live in community, and I believe that we're actually designed to be connected. And personally, with my spiritual conviction, I believe that connection actually makes us more human. We become more human through that connection. And so that means I have to spend time actually getting to know the person, the good parts and the bad parts, the wounds, as well as the superpowers, so that I can become more connected. Because ultimately, that's really what I want. I don't want to say that. Most guys don't want to say that, but that's really what we want. Really what we want is connection. And so I think when we come to communication and communication breakdowns, I keep trying to impose myself and my thought patterns and or wounds. Again, I come back to the safety part. When I feel safe, that's how I communicate. It may be a healthy way to communicate. Most often it's not, because I'm using some type of filter. Like my concept is masks. I use the word masks a lot. I'm using some type of mask to feel safe, because if I put a mask on, you don't know what I look like. You know how fun it was to wear a mask going through the airports when we were wearing all the COVID masks? I'm like, that person has no clue what I'm thinking, because they can't see all my facial expressions. And so removing that mask, seeing people without the mask on, I think that is what pushes and reduces the communication breakdown. Because if I know my wife, for instance, and we have, I want to say we have more problems than most couples. Especially, you marry a therapist, become a therapist. It's
You're evaluating each other all the time.
But she also knows. She knows some specific. She knows how to react when certain things happen. When I react in a certain way, she can tell when I'm vulnerable, and she knows how to help me. Well, how does she know that? Because she spent time getting to know. And again, maybe Kevin, you said earlier, a lot of people don't want to hear that. Well, people don't want to hear this probably either. Like, you got to be willing to spend the time.
It goes back to what Kevin said earlier. It's a lot of work. And by the time you work all day and then you get home and you want to sit down on the couch, and I speak in bullet points. Robin's like, give me the details. I'm like, well, here you go. Here's the 3 things, And Robin wants to tell you every single detail.
Can I ask?
No disrespect to her, but she wants, like, she's learned over 43 years, like, just give me the bottom line. That's all I need to make a decision. But she doesn't want to do that. She wants to go through the whole process, right? And
so
that's interesting.
I want to ask a question
you're saying
on this topic.
Yeah.
So I know you both a little bit. How do you communicate with Kevin to make sure that he gets the point?
Yeah, well, I have to give him a lot more detail.
Yeah, do you do it?
I'm getting better at it.
So, and that's what I would say to someone. Like, I had a guy recently sit in my office, and that's the question I said, he said, man, my team members will run through a wall with me. I said, well, then how come you're sitting on my couch? He said, well, my marriage is messed up. I said, tell me how you and your wife communicate so that you'll run through walls together. He's like, I don't have a clue. So what we do, we might be exhausted. You're right. So if there's an energy thing, let's just say there's not a health issue with the energy. So, nutrition or something like that, sleep.
Sure.
If there's an energy issue and that relationship is important, well, then you need to put less energy into the communication at work and use the same types of communication at home. The more
Hey, Anthony,
go ahead.
A little tip right there that something, I don't know if I learned this from you or maybe it was my neighbor Jeremy. I'm not sure, but I've heard you say things about that like this with Sarah and even your kids, is that if we take all of our day, and you just said the hardest thing is that you're hearing right now is that people are getting kind of paralyzed, not being able to think creative, and we kind of get in this analysis paralysis mode where we can't function. If as entrepreneurs or business owners, whatever you want to call us, if our days are filled with this pressure and this, and we're coming home and we're like, man, I got nothing left. Especially as a business owner and entrepreneur, one of the advantages of being abnormal in that is that if we're creative, we can create spaces that aren't necessarily have to be at 7:00 at night. So I've heard you do that. You said, hey, I'm going to go out to breakfast. Now, your example of going out on a date 8:00 on Sunday night, like I applaud you for that, but I can't even keep my eyes open then. But if I can take Sonia out to breakfast and then start my day, or if I can take a break during the day for lunch, then I'm not talking about work-life balance. I'm not completely exhausted.
Right.
By the time I get home.
And I don't know if this is where you're going, but if we go back to my, we'll call it a thesis, that we're weirdos, we're abnormal, then be abnormal and accept the abnormalcy. I've got guys who say, every once a month or every third Friday, I can't remember some of the systems, I go to my daughter's school and I pick her up and I take her to lunch and I bring her back. That's abnormal. I have the ability to do that. And now, of course, you can only do so much if they're in the public school system. But, going to a private school, if you homeschool your kids, whatever it is, don't be normal.
Right.
Like I'll take two of my daughters on a breakfast date or lunch date. Right. And be abnormal in everything. What I'm hearing
you say is accept that. Just accept.
Yeah. Stop trying to fit into the world that doesn't accept you. Right. I mean, generally speaking, because generally
we're trying to get a square peg in a round hole.
Yeah, we don't have to fit the mold. We don't have to fit the mold. Right. That's just the reality.
And we break a lot of the molds. And so, be the mold breaker. I'm not talking about being a rebellious, belligerent person. No. Don't hear me say. Don't hear me say what I'm not saying. What I'm saying is, break the molds that are preventing you from having the type of life that you want to live. Like, in theory, we went. It was a quick date. We were only out for about an hour. It was super nice, actually. It was the most refreshing part of the last 2 or 3 weeks for me. I had a bunch of things going on. It was super refreshing. In theory, because I run my own life business-wise, I could have said, great, I'm not going in till 9. Mm-hmm. I didn't because I had some stuff I wanted to do, but I could have because I can break my own mold and I can increase in that space. I can do the communication. I can do the work-life balance. It just doesn't look like everybody else's.
It's really positive when you are not conforming to, everyone else, and you can design the life you want to live.
Yeah, I think it's the way that we were designed, personally, because I think we're designed to create. We're designed to create, to move upwards, right? To have a spiritual movement upwards, but I think we're designed to create, man.
That's why I tell Robin all the time, these signs on the road are suggestions, and I'm like creating my own driving. Right? We gotta create our own. Wally, how do you and Sonia deal with risk? How risk averse are you versus her? This is another challenge that I'm seeing with folks in the mastermind that I'm coaching now, the uncertainty of what you're up against, and there's a risk tolerance. How do you and Sonia deal with that?
So can you put a little more context to that? You're talking about risk in
going in business for yourself 17 years ago, right? Yeah. So was that you both on the same page? You weren't? It took a minute. You were more willing to risk than she. It was vice versa.
Yeah. So when we started off, it was interesting. So well, I grew up in a very blue collar environment. Parents were divorced. Both my dads were essentially factory workers. My one dad was worked in factory. My other dad worked in a department of transportation for the state, and so very blue collar. And I actually thought about writing a book called "Growing Up Blue Collar," but the other side of that is my wife. She grew up with what you would consider be an entrepreneur, but really he was a business owner that had a job. And so what that did, though, is that I will give him credit for this. I will give him credit for this. His time and his family time, he made an effort to like those things. So the sacrifice of his business and maybe too much at times. And so what she saw was someone who had a business who didn't work very much, but yet they were okay. She recognizes now they didn't have much, and to them that wasn't that important. And so we got married. I have this blue collar, coming up from not poverty, but I mean, it wasn't poverty in the sense that we were on food stamps. My dad's worked hard. They lived in trailers. But they worked hard, and they created good lives for themselves and their families, and they loved us. But I knew there was something different for me. Like God designed, to your point, Anthony, I knew God designed me different. And so I've been pursuing that pretty much in some fashion, as you mentioned earlier, some with, failures that I was trying to fail forward and learn from, and other things that I have found success in over time. But for me, the risk tolerance, and there was a difference for us when we first got married, and I started really trying on my entrepreneurial shoes, if you will. Mm. It was different. I was willing to put up money. She wasn't. Right. I was willing to put a whole bunch of time into something for what seemed like a little bit of a result. Matter of fact, one of my definitions of success that I picked up from one of my mentors was being prepared for being in the right place at the right time is success. And that means you put energy and effort into things that won't show fruit today, but you're fertilizing, planting seeds. Maybe nothing ever grows from that, but there will be some things that sprout and grow. And there was a difference of risk for Sonia and I in that. Definitely when we started in the business.
How'd you get over that difference?
A lot of turmoil.
What would have made it less traumatic?
Man, that's a great question. I don't know if I know the answer to that. I think if I'm completely transparent about it, it was hard going through all those years of difference and understanding, and, been married 30 years this month. And I think I forget a lot of those things, honestly. Like I think God provides some level of protection for us in that I don't remember. I don't emotionally remember it all like it happened. And I'm grateful for that. So I had there was some counseling involved. There was lots of books, lots of conversations, lots of hard work. I know that to be true, to be able to get to the point where we have a little better, not completely the same. We're still different people.
Did you ever give up on it?
Ooh, man, you're going counseling territory.
Man, you got to lay on the couch,
going to listen to this and be like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Okay, so I will say this. Oh, this is terrible to say. She knows this. I've said this. I'm not revealing anything that she hasn't heard. There was a time where I didn't feel supported. I didn't feel encouraged. I didn't feel respected at all. Matter of fact, it was the other way. Now, was I loving well? I could look back and say, no, probably not. But I didn't feel that way. I didn't know that then. That's how I felt. And it was true. That's really what was going on. And there was a point. It wasn't about giving up. It was about not wanting her to have the success that I wanted to achieve.
So let's not go counseling, and let's go to where you actually didn't give up anymore. What happened in that spot? You went through some stuff. You had some. You were not happy with her.
It was the perseverance,
some personal
of working through it.
Okay, but what happened between the two of you?
To be able to work through it.
I'm gonna guess. Can I take a stab?
Yeah.
I'm gonna guess that you actually took whatever it was that was hurting and you decided to have a conversation with her about it. Now, maybe not about the wound, but you decided to move, to push into that. Hey, this risk, because the topic is, what is it? Risk and like uncertainty.
Uncertainty.
Right? Risk and uncertainty. My guess is, this is totally my guess, I don't know, is that
I can tell you what it was, because you primed the pump on that. I appreciate that, because it's hard to remember some of this stuff, right? The key factor in that for us was, we both, maybe I did, she did, I don't remember. We leaned into a book that we didn't want to read, but we read it. In the second chapter, there was a phrase that was mentioned in there that I had started to listen to my own tape in my head. I started to believe the lie that she was ill-willed toward me. And when I understood that she, even in her behaviors, and I'm not painting her in a bad picture. I had my own things, right? I'm just saying, like, this is the way it was. And she would tell you how I was. And so once I realized that she was not ill-willed, I could start thinking more clearly and seeing more clearly that we were just different. And we needed to communicate more and better.
It goes back to the conversation that Anthony was saying a while ago. You leaned into that conversation. You broke it down.
You're right.
You read a book.
You're right.
That's what I was going with risk. So, right, risk is one of those things where, like, shoot, I will jump every second. I mean, you guys both have known me long enough to know that I will jump. Like, oh, that's something we could jump after. Let's jump after that. My wife is not that. No, she's not. And that just happens to be our dynamic. I've seen entrepreneurs that are the reverse, where the male might still be the entrepreneur, but the wife is like, go, 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 jump, get over the go. Yeah, take it all. But again, realizing that it's different and having the conversation that it's different. Because if you have let's focus on spouse. If you have a relationship with your spouse, part of that conversation becomes, like, I think about my life. Like, I like this conversation right here makes me think I need to go downstairs and kiss my wife. I will when I get done with this, because so often she would be like, what's going to make you happy? Like, what's going to help you move the direction that you feel called to move, which is a big part of our life. And she would support me in stuff that was like stupid risky, even though she wasn't happy with it or wasn't super comfortable with it. What allowed her to do it, because we've had this conversation, is the fact that we had a relationship and that we were working on our relationship. Like I said, we've got just as many problems as the last person, next person, whatever person, all the people. But it's being able to have that kind of, like, hey, I don't want you to spend the money. Hey, I want to spend the money is not a conversation. Those are just a couple facts. Now go work on it. It doesn't mean at the end that you're going to spend the money. It might mean at the end that you're not going to spend the money. But it also might mean at the end that you're going to spend the money, or you might come up with a better solution.
Which is usually the case. Usually there's a better solution if you put the time into it.
But what happens is, instead, I feel wounded because you won't let me do what I want to do. You don't support me. I don't like this anymore. And I just allowed that to become a wound. And I not just allowed it to become a wound, I allowed it to fester, right? I love the video recorder, or, what's playing in my head. I call those ants, automatic negative thoughts. Well, it's a specific automatic negative thought. I'm not good enough to be an entrepreneur, or whatever it is. She thinks I'm fill in the blank.
Anthony, let's switch gears for a second. There's another side of this communication, and that's no communication related to it, which I've been guilty of in this particular topic related to risk. Robin is very risk averse, and I'm not, and I've never have been my whole career. And we've siloed our responsibilities and the things that we do in our marriage. And I've taken on all the business. So therefore, we never discuss it. We never talk about it. We don't talk about money. We don't talk about opportunities. She trusts me implicitly. But I found myself in a really bad spot recently because we're starting to acknowledge our age. And if I weren't here, what kind of detrimental position would that put her in? I probably would have been far better taking the time along the way to explain things rather than here I am trying to play catch up. And so I want to encourage the listeners today to determine whether you're in Wally's camp, Anthony's camp, my camp, and make good decisions as a result of leaning into the communication. Because I think in all of our instances, it would be better suited for each one of us to take the time daily to lean in and have that communication rather than the breakdown, spend the effort and the energy. I love how both of you have suggested don't do it the conventional way and wait till 9 o'clock at night to have these conversations. Let's do it at breakfast. Let's do it at lunch. Let's do it in the middle of the afternoon. We take a walk. I think that I've learned a lot in regards to this interview related to not trying to conform, but think we're different and it's okay. Break the mold. And that's what I like out of this conversation.
I had a mastermind group. It's since moved on, but I had a mastermind group. And one of the things that we did in this group is we sat down and we said, where are you at on these things? And so it was your will, where's all the money? How much money do you have? Life insurance, right? It's all this stuff, right? And we sat down and we said as a group, there was 10 guys, and we just beat the drum until it was done. Every single week until every single guy had it done. And so to your point, Big A, does she need to know the details of the business? Probably not. But I mean, if it's how she feels loved, I might have to sit down and tell her. But
Right.
but having that set up, having that prepared, and it's not just saying having a last will and testament. It's actually having the conversation with your spouse. Like, this is
Right.
what all the stuff is. Here's the list of things. And maybe that's a 6 months thing. Maybe that's a yearly thing. And maybe it's done with you, whoever helps you with those things, your attorney or whoever.
Yeah.
But having those conversations so that they do know,
Sure.
right? That's that fear of death, man. People do not want to have that conversation. They don't want to have it.
Anthony, you know what made her feel better than anything? I took a day about 2 years ago and I wrote down 11-page document on a yellow pad. Every single thing I'm involved in, all the accounts, the passwords, what she should do, who she should call next. She felt so safe at the end of that because it took us another 6 hours to go through everything. And she felt a part of, right? She felt loved because I took the time to do the hard work. So I don't think anybody on this call is right or wrong. I think you got to figure out what works for you and your spouse. And so for the listeners today, I hope that you'll think through what works for you. Do you need to break the mold? Do you need to do it in silos? Do you need to ever how your approach is? I think what I'm taking away from this today is massive amounts of communication, figure out what works best for you, break the mold if you need to, and don't do it conventional. And I think that's going to serve us well.
And I'd add, if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. So then try a different one. Like, well, how do I communicate with how should I communicate with my wife?
Don't give up. Don't give up.
Yeah.
Don't give up, because when you give up,
figuring it
it doesn't work. So like, people ask me all the time, well, how should I communicate with my wife? I would say, what did you try? Well, I tried this. Hey, that didn't work. Let's try something else. Like,
Right.
Don't give up. I even think about you guys, you and Robin. I think you guys have had Big A has done the business side, and Robin has done a lot of the households. Okay, have that conversation. I can't tell you how many people come into my office when they're young married, like let's say between the 20s and the 30s, and they're like, I said, have you ever had the conversation like, who's taking out the trash?
Right.
Have you ever had that conversation? Well, no, he should just know, because my dad took out the trash, and
Right. There you go.
that's fine. You should probably just have that. Like, we don't have that because we come into marriage and we come into relationships with assumptions, and we assume that other people have the same assumptions that we have.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, what's funny is Wally and I had this conversation just a few weeks ago, and no one instructed us to do that. But when we got married, now 43 years ago, we did have that conversation. Hey, these are all the things that I'm going to do. Anything else you want me to do? No. Okay. I'm going to do all these things, and you stay out of this area, this area, and this area. That's worked for us. It doesn't work for everybody, but it works for us. I'm proud to say at the end of this interview that we did do one thing right, and that's we did have
You've done more than that
conversation, right?
I'll say this: we have we're part of, my wife is an MFT, I'm a LPC, and we're part of some of the assessments, the marriage assessment, one of the top marriage assessments that we've been certified in. A major percentage of it is literally, who did this when you were a kid, mom or dad? Who do you expect to do this in your marriage? Like, and when we walk through that part of it, we solve so many problems in marriages because they haven't had. And you think, well, that's super mundane. Like, who's going to fold the laundry, or who's going to do the laundry? We've never had that conversation. I don't know. I expect him to do it. I expect her to do it. Whatever. And it teaches them. Oh, we just have to talk. Like, we just have to talk.
Anthony, my granddaughter, Abby and I had a conversation the other day. She just finished her second year in college, and I called her the other day about a little task here at the house. And she said, Big A, I hope that you die before Nana. And I said, why? And she said, because you don't know how to do anything around the house. So I said, well, that's Nana's instruction, right? She wants me to stay out of doing some of those things. Anthony, how can people contact you if they want to reach out and learn more about what you do?
No problem, man. We're at witthouse.com. But then, of course, I'm also at anthonywitt.com. Those are the websites. Their phone numbers and emails are on those websites. So anywhere you find Witt House is going to get to me, and anywhere you find Anthony Witt, I'm out there.
Anthony's a man of integrity. He's a man of character. He does a great job. Works with a lot of our mastermind members at Iron Sharpens Iron. Does a phenomenal job. He's got a great heart. He's a real dude, and he can help you if you need any help in these areas. Anthony, thank you for being with us today, buddy. I've really enjoyed it.
Thanks for having me, man.
Well, now you see exactly what I was talking about. What a great guy. What a deep thinker. Anthony took us to a place I wasn't expecting to go, but he's really showed us the value of great communication, how that we can break the mold, right? We don't have to conform. We're entrepreneurs. We can do it differently, and you can do the same. So figure out what works best for you and your family. Break the mold if you need to. Go do it your way. It's your life, and you can design the way you want to live it so that you can have that incredible view from the top.